Some of you will know that I'm rather fond of old Grundig radios. I've done videos in the past repairing this Concert Boy 1100 and more recently the Transistor 305. I'll put links to those down in the description. Well, a few weeks ago I spotted this Yacht-Boy 210 from the early 1970s. It was a decent price, so I couldn't resist. To my surprise, and unlike the other two radios, the tuner wasn't seized solid, and better still, when I pressed the power button the radio worked. So this won't so much be a repair video as a clean-up and general look-over video. The biggest obvious issue is that the top of the Ariel has been broken off. I think I'll just have to live with that. I might keep it at its truncated length and just solder a replacement top cap on so I don't poke my eye out. Or I could try grafting part of another Ariel on the top, but that could be a bit tricky. I'll start off by taking the back off and then work out how to remove the internal components. And the three knobs will need to come off. They should in theory be a simple push fit with no grub screws or anything like that. Okay, we're inside, and it looks like the entire workings are mounted on an inner chassis. There's a couple of screws over here, and that's one side free. Now where are the other screws? It can't be any of these because they just look like they hold the circuit board in place. Found them. They were hiding underneath the retracted Ariel. And that's the chassis released. I'll get the speaker wires unsoldered and then I can start cleaning. As is usually the case, the anti-rattle foam has decomposed to dust. I'll remove that, and if I get rattles, replace it with new foam, otherwise I'll leave it without any foam. Rather handily, there's a bit of slack built into the speaker wires, so you can partially remove the chassis, making the unsoldering process somewhat easier. I'll just brush the dust off, trying to orientate the chassis so that the dust falls outside rather than inside the radio itself. And I'll peel off any bits of decomposed foam that I come across. I'll remove the sticky residue later on. Right, that's the worst of the dirt cleaned off the guts of the radio. I'll pop the speaker out and check the centre bit over the voice coil, because it does sound a bit fluttery, and I've had to reattach or even replace those in the past, when they've been made of a foam that's decomposed. And true to form, this speaker has the decomposed foam, so I'll carefully clean that off and then replace it. There may well be better materials, but I tend to use a disc of neoprene rubber glued in place with EvoStick, and that's worked well in the past. Right, that's my replacement voice coil cover glued in place. I should really replace the foam gasket because it's on its last legs, but I'm not sure if I've got any suitable material kicking round at the moment. I couldn't bring myself to leave it as it was, so here's the speaker with a new gasket fitted. Now on to cleaning the case. I shouldn't need much more than a damp cloth and a few cotton buds to clean the case. This piece of trim has come unstuck, so I'll re-stick that once I've cleaned everything. I might use some gentle metal polish on some of the chromed parts, but probably nothing more than that. Well, that took much longer than expected, but that's the main case cleaned up, just the back and all the knobs to do now. Right, that's everything cleaned and the radio back together. I've added one section to the Ariel. The bottom of the broken section was still in the next section down, so I soldered a bit of brass tube to the broken stub. That way it slides as it should, and it's still retained when you extend the Ariel. I've also 3D printed a top cap, which was printed in two halves to surround a brass screw and washer that I soldered into the top of my new bit of brass tube. I've used plastic weld to join the two halves, and that's job done. Looking at the controls, you've got the power switch, then the band selectors for long wave, medium wave, short wave and FM. Pressing long wave and medium wave simultaneously activates the external audio input, the connectors for which are hidden round the back. You have this sliding panel which reveals an input for an external 9-volt power supply, a headphone socket, mono of course, a DIN plug for external audio input, connections for external antennas, either dipole for FM or just straight wire antenna for the AM bands, and there's also a ground connection here. Sliding the panel to the other side reveals a space where you could fit some sort of additional mains transformer, and a switch to select between battery and mains. I haven't seen one of those mains adapters, but I guess it had a plug on it to fit directly onto this PP9 battery connector. Or maybe that just allowed you to use a PP9 instead of 6 D cells. Anyway, let's try the radio out. The reception in here isn't that great, and my studio lights definitely don't help, but
against them, I could really see Laurel and Hardy playing them.
Long wave is working fine.
I learned to do it. For 6 years now, and there's only a handful of times that the production actually needs to stop.
And medium wave is also fine. Short wave is unusable unless I turn my studio lights off. So, here goes. I may have to return to shortwave later in the day because I'm not picking up anything at the moment, but while the lights are out I can demonstrate the backlight. On battery this only works when you press the button, but when it's powered by the optional mains transformer the light is permanently on. And finally FM. I'll see if I can find something safe that won't incur a copyright strike. And this should do. The AFC button can be used in FM to help lock onto a channel. You've also got a battery level meter which displays the level when you press the button at the bottom. The tone knob has a bass cut feature when you pull it out, which is quite nice. And it also helps when you're listening at higher volumes, which tend to distort when the bass is boosted. Okay, it's now later in the day, so I can try shortwave again. And there we go, that's somewhat better than midday. I love how this radio looks. It reminds me of the interior of classic cars. These would have been quite an expensive radio at the time, certainly not the sort of thing I'd have ever had, even as a hand-me-down. The Grundig radios do seem to be very well built, and consequently are still relatively desirable now. Anyway, I think that will do for now. I've got another interesting radio to look at sometime in the future, when I eventually get round to it. If you've enjoyed watching, please like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel, not forgetting to click on the bell icon so you get notifications when future videos are released. That's it for now, so thanks for watching and I'll see you in a future video.